It's a matchup of the undefeateds. Can the Minnesota Vikings 2-0 defeat the Houston Texans at home, who are also 2-0? This is a big-time matchup between two teams seeking to be 3-0. But something that cannot be overlooked in this game is the revenge game for a certain Houston Texans player, Cam Akers. Anytime you go up against your former team, it's always a revenge game. Cam Akers tears his Achilles last year for the Minnesota Vikings for the second time in his career and somehow is already back. This guy heals faster than anybody I've ever seen in my entire life. Cam Akers will not be forgotten from the Minnesota Vikings because he has one of the greatest moments in terms of blocking another player that I've ever seen. And if you don't remember this moment, I'm going to play it for you right now. Watch Cam Akers. Right here. There's Cam Akers. Running back. Okay. Dobbs scrambles out to his right. Look at this. Pow! That is one of the greatest blocks a running back on, it looks like a defensive tackle. Number 75. Yeah, that's their defensive tackle. Cam Akers is not even, what is he, like 5'8", 5'9"? Boom! Just lowers his entire body. And watch him walk over him. He's like, yeah, I got you. He points at him, walks over me like Allen Iverson's him. That is one of the greatest blocks I have ever seen from anybody. Not just a lineman, not just from running backs or receivers. That is a sensational block. All right, so let's dive into this Houston Texans Minnesota Vikings matchup. The Texans defeated the Indianapolis Colts 29-17. In that game, CJ Stroud, 24 for 32, 234 yards, 7.5 yards per throw, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a rating of 115.9, and QBR of 66.4. Their matchup against the Bears, CJ Stroud, they won 19-13. 7.2 yards per throw, 1 touchdown, 0 picks, rating of 94.7, and a QBR of 58.3. There has been no sophomore slump for CJ Stroud. In fact, he's even gotten better. I would argue that he's more efficient and effective than he was his rookie season. He understands more. He's got better weapons. The Houston Texans are a better football team this year than they were last year. And you look at the weapons that CJ Stroud has around him. Let's take a look at this Bears matchup. Yeah, Cam Akers, like I mentioned. But you got Joe Mixon, who didn't have a great game against the Bears. 9 carries for 25 yards. But he also is a threat out of the backfield. 3 catches for 25 yards. But Nico Collins has been a beast for the Houston Texans this year. 8 receptions, 135 yards in that Bears game. And then they got Stephon Diggs, who had 4 receptions for 37 yards in that Bears game. And then we look at the week 1 matchup they had against the Colts. Give me a second to get there. And Joe Mixon, 30 carries, 159 yards. To add, he also had 3 catches for 19 yards. Nico Collins, 6 catches for 117 yards. Stephon Diggs, 6 catches, 33 yards with 2 touchdowns. This Houston Texans team is by far the most talented team the Minnesota Vikings have faced this season. They are diverse offensively. They got CJ Stroud, who I would take over Brock Purdy. They got Joe Mixon, who I would take over Jordan Mason. And they have a very good wide receiver tandem in Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, not to even mention Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz. So the Houston Texans are a lot of people's favorite to reach the championship game because of what they have on their roster and CJ Stroud's ability to make plays. Now, you can't discount what the Minnesota Vikings have done this season either. And according to DraftKings, the Texans are 2-point favorites. And this feels like a field goal game. This feels like last-second field goal game, kick the field goal as time expires. Because the Vikings defense has been sensational throughout the first 2 weeks of the year. The 49ers offense was lost. The Giants only put up 3 points against the Vikings defense. They scored 6. They only scored 3 against the Vikings defense, though. And they've been corralling the quarterback. They've been distracting the quarterback. Their disguise has been really, really well this season. And if you've been following anything on social media with the talking shows with Dan Orlovsky and with anyone, I don't know, any ESPN guys, they've been talking about how schematically correct and how schematically confusing the Vikings defense has been this year. So that's going to be the battle of this game. Plus, you can't discount the Texans' defensive line either. Danielle Hunter, that's also a revenge game for him. So, and Stephon Diggs. This is the revenge game for the Houston Texans. 3 former Minnesota Vikings facing off in US Bank Stadium. Should be a fun game to watch. Are you going to boo Stephon Diggs? But seems like what's going to define this game is the Minnesota Vikings defensive ability to throw CJ Stroud off, because he hasn't been off through the first 2 weeks of the season. And the Chicago Bears have a legitimate defense. Sure, they only scored 19 points, but they didn't turn CJ Stroud over. They didn't make him uncomfortable. He didn't throw any picks. And he was, what did I say he was? 23 for 36, which isn't super accurate, but he still almost threw for 300 yards. And it's a very solid stat line in that game. He didn't turn the ball over. That's what he couldn't do against a Chicago Bears offense that sucks. So that's going to be a big battle in this game for the Minnesota Vikings. That's going to determine this outcome of this football game. Predictions? My prediction for this football game is Houston Texans 24, Minnesota Vikings 21. Last second field goal. That's my prediction. Thank you for watching. Hit subscribe. Thank you for making this podcast part of your day.